Hey, what's up everybody? In today's video, I wanted to do a recap of the Fortnite World Cup Week 1. We learned a lot in the Fortnite World Cup qualifiers for Week 1. For example, there were cheaters. We also learned about things added to the game like ballers and how that might affect the World Cup, allegations of cheating, stream sniping, worries from professional players. All these things happen, and there's a lot of things to learn from Week 1 and how it'll impact future weeks. But before we get into that, I just wanted to cover a little bit of what the World Cup is. Now, the World Cup for Fortnite is one of the largest esports events in history. It has a huge payout, and the top players in the end will receive about $3 million. And this means they will become millionaires. They'll become some of the richest gamers in the world and potentially streamers in the world, and they'll be celebrities. So there's a lot on the line, and there's been a lot of anxieties on the line. A lot of the professional players have been really worried because the qualifications coming into the World Cup have been online over the internet and have allowed public players to qualify as well. And this is something that professional players are very frustrated about, because a lot of the time you have to join a professional team in order to qualify for esports events, because your professional team will get you into the event. But here, all you have to do is have an internet connection and have the Fortnite game downloaded, and then qualify in the arena mode in order to make it into the World Cup qualifiers. And right before these World Cup qualifiers, Fortnite added something called a baller, which is a way to move around the map. And these ballers also had a lot of health and shield on them, so it allowed a lot less skilled players to make it to the end game of Fortnite, and a lot of people made it to the Champions League, which allowed them to qualify for these World Cup finals. And so a lot of the pro players thought that they wouldn't make it to the finals because these less professional players were going to outplace them due to these ballers. And this was one of the biggest things coming into this weekend. One of the biggest concerns was whether the pro players would make it. And on top of that, Fortnite also took out stretch resolution for PC players. They could no longer use stretch resolution going into competitive mode. So it seemed like Fortnite was taking every single competitive advantage that competitive players had. It was online qualifiers, there are these ballers, and the removal of stretch res. All of these things were unfavorable to the pro players and PC players in general. And it made it seem less likely that these top tier players were going to make it, and that the more people from the public and console players would make it. But is that how things actually turned out? Well, let's discuss that. First off, the 19 people qualified for the World Cup finals in this first week. And this first week was solely the solo mode in Fortnite. So players playing by themselves could make it to the World Cup finals. And a lot of people were worried, again, like the PC players, the pro players were very worried about this. But when you look at the 19 players, most of them are professionals. And the region I'm most familiar with is the NA East region, the North America region. And again, Fortnite carried out this competition by server region. And the server regions are NA East, NA West, Europe, Brazil, Oceania. In NA East, you had Sen Bugha or Bugha, however you pronounce it, Ghost Bizzle, Dubsfn, TSN, Comadon, Liquid Vivid, Hunter T Ceice. So out of all these players, every single one of them was a pro except for this Dubsfn guy, and I'm not really sure if he's a pro or not, but whether or not he is, he was accused of cheating. So even if he isn't a pro player, then people think he was cheating. That's still to be verified, and there's a lot of people joking about that. Tfue and Cloak were both saying that they wanted him on their team. There's a lot of people have been making jokes about that, but for all the worries that these PC gamers had and the pro players, it's very evident that they still had the edge. And even with ballers at the end, that they still made it. So a lot of the worries out there weren't really founded. And a lot of people were thinking that the pro players wouldn't even qualify after the first qualifier round. And the most notable player that didn't qualify was in Europe, Mr. Savage M. He did not qualify. He was way under the points. And so, but that was really the biggest one that didn't make it. A lot of other people easily qualified. The largest streamers in the world qualified: Ninja, Tfue, Chap, Symphony, all those guys qualified. Mongrel almost made it to the finals. So a lot of players did really well. So it seems like their worries about Fortnite trying to favor console players, it didn't really come true. And as far as I know, I don't know any console players that actually made it. So it seems like PC players and pro players are still easily making it, even with the addition of ballers. But now that we're speaking about ballers, that was one thing that was very evident, is that ballers made it easy to get to the end. And a lot of players qualified for that final Sunday, even though they might not have been, worthy of it. But everybody's worried that Jimmy down the street was gonna make it to the World Cup finals and win $3 million with no skill doesn't seem like it's founded at all. But there were some funny moments from people streaming where there was 10 balls at the end, only a couple people walking around. But even in those scenarios, the best players in the world still eliminated all those baller people, just because the circle would get so small and the baller people would fall out into the storm. But speaking of streamers, that's what I wanted to talk about next. The big thing, as I said in the beginning, was that Fortnite did this competition to make their game more popular and more appealing. They're giving money out, large amounts of money, the largest esports prize pool in history, basically, and to bring more eyes onto the game and more appeal to the game. However, nobody streamed this because there's so much money on the line that they don't want to give away their edge, their ideas, their strategies, and they also don't want to get stream sniped. So really the only two people, big streamers that were streaming, were Ninja and Tfue. Also Mr. Savage M also streamed, but a lot of people weren't streaming. The Fortnite channel was streaming, but there weren't many streamers. So it seems like there aren't a lot of eyes on this. There's not a lot of visibility into this. If people want to watch this, then they have to watch only a couple of streamers. So Fortnite has to really think about stream sniping and think about a way that they can have a competition and have people watching it without screwing over the best players in the world, because the best players in the world don't want to stream this. And another thing to keep in mind during these World Cup qualifiers is that there's not much money in these weekly things. They say they're giving out $1 million a week, but what that comes down to is about like $5,000 for the top players. And in some region, the top players only get $2,500. So there's not that much money on a weekly basis, and we learned that this week. But there will be a lot of money in the finals in New York. Just for making it to the finals, you automatically get $50,000. So people like Ghost Bizzle and Liquid Vivid, they're gonna get $50,000 no matter what. So there's tons of money on the line, and they could make $3 million if they get first place. So that's something else to keep in mind. It's huge. But even if you qualify or you don't qualify, these couple of weeks, you're not gonna make that much money. The top streamers aren't gonna make that much money. It's really about getting your name out there, about making sure that you're still one of the top players in the world. Another thing that came out of the first week of World Cup is 2 allegations of cheating. I've already mentioned one of those with Dubsfn. He was alleged to have been cheating, and Fortnite's gonna investigate that, and other people are gonna investigate that. But then there's another professional player that was actually shown to be cheating, because the person he bought the cheats from released a video of him and released messages and the money being transferred. So that's something else to see. That's something else that we learned, is that there is cheating, and that's something that's going to come from these online qualifiers, because people are playing at home from their home PCs, playing on the internet, and they can install whatever software they want on their computer. It's not a LAN, it's not an on-site event at Fortnite's facilities or a restricted facility. So it'll be interesting to see what Fortnite does in the future. And since people learn that there's people cheating, whether there will be more cheating in the upcoming qualifiers. And it'll be really interesting. I wasn't expecting that. I think a lot of people weren't expecting that. Most people were worried about ballers and stretch resolution. They didn't really think that cheating to make it to the end was possible. I know people had it in the back of their mind, but we'll have to see what comes of the cheating in the future World Cup qualifiers. Now that I've recapped the first week, I kind of want to talk about the second week. The second week is duos. So what should we be looking for in duos? We should be looking about whether ballers will still be in the game. You never know with Fortnite and their patches. At the last second before this, they reduced the health of the baller down to 200 HP, and they said there's going to be further changes they haven't done yet. It'll be interesting to see what they do with that. You also have to remember that the reboot van is in the game. So it'll be interesting to see how duos utilize the reboot van. And also it'll be interesting to see which pros qualify into the duos. Will the same pros that made it this past week qualify with their duos this week, or will new pros qualify, or will we actually have people that aren't pros qualify? Because this week was not anything very interesting. It's mainly the pros that qualified, so it'll be interesting to see what happens during these duos. And also, just even looking past the duos, it's interesting to me to see all these pros that are worried about not making it to the World Cup qualifiers because of the online qualification. It'll be interesting to see whether they make it. I think they will, because if you think about it, this week, some of the best players in the world qualified with Ghost Bizzle, Liquid Vivid. So those guys don't need to worry about qualifying anymore. And the further you get into these World Cup qualifiers, the more people that have already qualified. So there's gonna be less top pros at the end of the game. And I think the people that are worried about not making it, like Ninja and Tfue and Symphony, I think those guys are gonna make it later on, and they have a chance in solos and in duos. There's still 4 solo tournaments left, 4 solo qualification weeks left for people to make it. There's obviously gonna be 19 to 20 people making it every week. So it'll be interesting to see who makes it and whether it's gonna be the usual suspects that are there at the end. So to get more of these recaps and previews of the World Cup weeks to come, make sure to subscribe to this channel. Thanks for watching.